Hello, I'm Shannon, owner of Shrush Design. I specialize in hand-lettered and illustrated designs for things like signage, murals, invitations and other stationery, digital graphics, and more. I make tutorials of how to do these projects, my methods, the tools I use, and the software I use on a regular basis. For anyone who may be interested, I now also have a free companion course to go along with these videos where you can get access to additional notes, any digital downloads you may need, extra practice, and the direction of where to go once you master the tutorial. You can find that link down in the description or just go to my website www.shrushdesign.com and look for the online courses section. Okay, let's get on with the tutorial. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to create a new canvas today. I'm going to Procreate. And as I said before, if this is the first video you're watching of mine, you'll be hearing this the first time, but otherwise you probably heard it many times. Anything that is a plus sign in Procreate means new or add new. So this plus sign in the top right corner of the gallery, which is a screen that opens up when you first open up the app, will take you to the new canvas menu. Now there's two ways to create a new canvas for your art. You have some templates here. Yours might look a little different, I'll explain that in a minute. But there's templates here, and anytime you create a canvas, it'll create a template for you. A lot of these are untitled because I only used them for one thing and I wasn't going to use them again, so I didn't bother naming them. But some of these I did name, like I have YouTube video, YouTube thumbnail, YouTube banner, things that I make fairly often. And then I have like card and paper sizes and other social media sizes like Facebook cover photo, event cover photo, etc. Those are all ones I've made because I know the size that I need for those, and then I create a template so that I can just pick it quickly. But Procreate also has its own templates that it gives you. The screen size one is always pinned to the top up here. That's the size of your screen. So that one I use just when I'm quickly going into Procreate just to show something, and I don't need a specific size or anything like that. The size here is 2732 by 2048 pixels. That's what's shown on the far right here. All these are sizes. The units here is pixels. Some of these are millimeters, some of these are inches. I don't think I have any centimeters one, but that's another unit you can use. We'll see that when we go into the create a new canvas screen. But this over here will tell you the size of your template. This obviously, whether it's something that's given to you or something that you name yourself, this is just to remind you what this is for. So you can type in something when you create a template. I'll show you how to do that. And then this middle thing here, this first little oval, and you see P3, sRGB, CMYK. Those are all color profiles. So in Procreate now, used to only be RGB, but they changed it where you could do CMYK. I don't know, 4 years ago. You have to choose, and I'll show you this more when we get in there, but you have to choose between RGB and CMYK for your canvas. You can't change it in the middle. So RGB is mainly for things that are going to be seen on a screen. So if you're showing someone on your iPad, or if you're uploading it to social media or a website, or you're going to show it, like you're going to make a video out of it and show it on a screen, that would be something you would pick RGB for. In general, sometimes there's exceptions to the rule. And then CMYK is anything you're going to print out. And again, sometimes there's exceptions here where a printer may be able to do RGB and they may request you use RGB rather than CMYK because RGB is more vibrant. But in general, when you're going to print something, most printers can only handle CMYK colors, so that's what the CMYK is. That stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is black. And then RGB is red, green, and blue. So you have to pick the color profile while you're making your template or choosing your template, and you're not going to be able to change that later. Some of the things you can change afterwards, but this is not something you can. You have to stay in that color profile the entire time when you're using that canvas. So the one thing you can do here is, so I like I said, Procreate will have templates here. The ones I have from Procreate are the screen size, the square, and the 4K, and then they had a few other ones here. I don't even remember what they are anymore, but they were things that I didn't use and I didn't need, so I ended up deleting them. And then these are ones that I made. So you'll see down here, because every time you make a canvas, it will it will save the template for you, even if you don't necessarily want it to. And there's been a lot in here that I haven't gotten rid of, especially lately. So I will delete all those eventually. But just to show you, so I have some that are named test in here because I've shown how to make this a few times. But if you swipe left on any of these, including the ones Procreate gave you, it will give you the option to edit that template or delete. So I'm just going to show you delete first. Real easy, just deletes it. But if you want to edit it, you can pick one to edit. Let's just say we want to edit this 12 by 12 one here. It's going to take you into the same screen that you're going to see when you create a new canvas. But this is just editing the one you already have in your list. So I'm going to show you how to do all this later, but this is how you would edit something that's already in there. Cancel that. Otherwise you could save it, and if you made any changes. But so that's all. These untitled ones are just ones that I don't really use very often. I just made for one thing, and I'm probably not going to use it again. Or if I do, it'll be rarely, so I don't really need a template. I can just make it again later. But I haven't deleted all of them. I will, I promise. But anyway, so anytime you do create a new canvas, which you do by hitting this plus sign right here that comes up in the menu, that's in the rectangle, rounded rectangle, I guess, that will take you to that same screen, except you're creating a brand new one. You're not editing an old one. But anytime you do that, it's going to save it at the bottom of your list here. So let's do that. Now the first thing, if you don't want it to say untitled canvas all the time, you can click on this title on the top here and then type in whatever you want to type in. I'm going to do test 3 because I had test 1 and test 2 in there already. So that's going to be, I hit return. That's going to be what the canvas template is named now. And the other thing is, so there's these 4 categories over here: dimensions, color profile, time lapse, and canvas properties. The only thing you really need to make sure that you do before you create the canvas is to choose, I said this already, but the RGB or CMYK. I'm going to come back to that, but I just want you to know that that's the only thing that you really need to make sure that you have correct when you're making your template before you start, because otherwise you're going to have to redo everything, because you cannot change RGB to CMYK later. Going back to dimensions. So you have width, height, DPI, which is dots per inch, and then maximum layers. Now the layers you can't actually change. That's gonna change on its own based on what else you pick up here. So I'm going to start with DPI. That's dots per inch, like I said. That is the quality that, because Procreate is a pixel-based or raster-based program. So it's based on whether it's on the screen or on a printer, the dots, your pixels, per inch of screen. So the higher the quality, the higher the dots per inch, the sharper your image will be. So I think default, it's coming up 300 here because that's what I normally use, but like Procreate's default is like 120, I think. But you can change, I always change it to 300. Unless I'm doing something where it doesn't matter and I need to save it for later. So let me put 120 in here. Actually, it didn't change anything here, but sometimes it changes the layers. Sometimes that changes the layers depending on the size too. But normally it doesn't make that much of a difference with dots per inch. But I'll show you more with size. So let's go to width and height. So let's click on one of these, width. Now that brought up this screen, and you see you can choose the units here, and you see as I do that the layers is changing because of the numbers that are already in there. Some of these are too large, but it started off with pixels. Let's say we're doing inches, and right now the layer is too large. It's too large canvas because we have 3,600 inches height and 300 inches width. So let's do like a 5 by 7. So Width and height is 5 by 7. You see the maximum layers did go down to 209 now because the pixels that were there were actually smaller than the 5 by 7. So let me just show you if I do something even smaller than that. Let's do 3 by 5. You see it went back up to 400. Now if I do like 8 by 12, it goes down even further, maximum layers. So in general, you want a good amount of layers. It doesn't necessarily need to be 400, depending on what you're making. But if you are limited by your layers and you're making something at least semi-complicated, you're going to have to make different concessions. If you need something very large, like you need the size to be very large, you're going to need to make concessions because your layers is going to be very small. So like it could be down to like 10 or even less than that. And depending on what you're making, you're probably going to want more than 10 layers. So if you need it to be that size, you're going to have to do certain things, and we can talk about that in another video. But just so you know in general, the bigger you make your canvas, the lower amount of layers you're going to have. All right, let's just keep 8 by 12 for now. We'll go to color profile. So again, RGB and CMYK, those are your two options. Now there's subcategories in here. In general, unless you're asked for a specific type, because sometimes depending on what you're trying to make, and if you're going to send it to like to get printed or whatever, or they might say use this specific RGB profile, like it'll tell you which one. But otherwise, in general, the first two category in this category are generally good. I usually go for this first RGB one, but you can do display P3 too for most things like social media and stuff. That's no problem. The difference is like I couldn't tell you the exact differences between all these, but there's a slight there's slightly more colors or different colors in a few of these or they display a little differently within these color profiles. So again, it's way over my head depending on, which one I would pick. Normally, I have no problem with the first two myself. And again, unless I'm asked to use a different one. And then CMYK also, this is probably the one where you're going to encounter more often, where someone might want like an exact one, but the generic one is usually fine. That's going to work with most like printers, especially if you're printing it from home or you're having like a home printer do it, rather than like a big company that has like a special printer. They may want a specific CMYK profile and they may ask you for it. So, but in general, this first one is good. So again, if you're doing in general a screen, pick one of these RGB ones, and printing, pick one of the CMYKs. Let's just say it's an RGB in this one. Time-lapse settings is for your time-lapse video. So if you don't already know this, when you are drawing on your canvas, everything you do gets recorded unless you turn it off. And this is for that video if you're really interested in keeping that video. So it's going to ask you like which quality or the size of your video do you want, and obviously this will make the file size bigger the higher you go. And same with quality. So in general, this goes from smallest to largest and lowest quality to best quality. And then this HEVC is a newer type of video file that is low file size but still retains higher quality, but it's not recognized by it's not universally recognized right now by every single, wherever you're going to export it to. It depends on what you're using it for. So I mean, I usually turn it off. I normally don't have a problem with the file size myself, so I don't usually turn that on. But if it's possible for you to do, that can save your file size, and you want to save file size. So just know that just make sure that you're able to use the HEVC file type with whatever you're trying to do with your thing. But anyway, so then canvas properties. So this is something you can change once you open the screen, or the canvas, I should say. But if you want to, you can automatically change the background color of your template. So if you're always going to make something that's got black for a background color instead of white, you can do that. But otherwise default is white. Or if you always wanted a transparent background, you could do that as well. Now I just want to show you, once I create this, I put it on automatically transparent, but you can turn it back on just like this, or you could turn it off that way. So if you made it white, you'd be able to turn this off just by going to your layers menu. And you'd also, this is like, you could pick the background color here if you wanted to. So you don't have to pick it in the canvas, the new canvas screen, if that's what it's called. You can pick it individually each time anyway, but that kind of saves a step if you're always making something that has a certain background, certain color background. You can keep that as a template. So that's what that's there for. I usually don't touch it because I can just change it here. It doesn't bother me to do that. So, but this should be an 8x12 size canvas here that we chose, and it's got the RGB color scheme. Let me just show you. If I go into the color there and I go to values, it's going to have RGB here. Now, I do want to quickly show you a CMYK version. If I go back up to the gallery, let me just open one of these CMYK ones. If I go back into here, you see it has the RGB, but it also has CMYK here, which is how you can choose colors. And then if you go back into the disc, you see that the colors are kind of more muted, and they're not as vibrant as the screen colors. That's because you're using CMYK and not RGB. So they would look nice being printed out on paper, but they don't really look nice on screen. So that's that. But anyway, that is basically how you create a canvas. That should be everything you need to know as far as that goes. So see you in the next video.